Hello and welcome to Lessons My Patients Taught Me. I'm your host, Dr. Elliot Davidson, family doctor, recording another video podcast from my home base in Solon, Ohio. This is episode 81, and on this podcast, we talk about the lessons my guests and I have learned from our patients over our many years in medicine. I'm always looking for interesting people with stories worth sharing, and today's guest absolutely fits that bill. Dr. Randy Jernejcic has had one of the most diverse careers in family medicine I've come across. He's been a family doctor, an emergency physician, a chief medical officer, a hospital CEO, and a senior physician executive leading quality and safety for a major health systems. His work has taken him across Ohio and around the world, including China, Rwanda, and the Middle East. He's helped lead major health systems through the opioid crisis, hospital transformation, patient safety initiatives, and he now serves at the Cleveland Clinic as Associate Chief and Medical Director for Safety, Quality, and Patient Experience across the Ohio market. So technically, he may be one of my bosses, so I'll try to behave. He earned both his math degree and his MD from The Ohio State University. He was inducted in the Alpha Omega Alpha Honor Medical Society, and he completed his residency at Grant Medical Center right there in Columbus. He later earned his Master's of Medical Management from Carnegie Mellon University. Along the way, he did a lot of interesting things. He served as a physician support for Vice President Joe Biden during his diplomatic trip to China, and he even worked as a staff physician during the 2008 Beijing Olympics, which is probably a better story than anything I've got. Randy and I recently met at the NeoMed student-run health clinic, and within about 10 minutes I thought, this is someone I want to keep talking to. Randy, thanks so much for sitting down with me today. Randy, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Elliot, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. It's interesting when I heard the title of your podcast, right? Lessons My Patients Taught Me. I guess maybe I'm getting old enough that I can really think about this and with a long history. But the title, it's really got me thinking a lot about it. It's interesting. My daughter is going to medical school starting here in another month. The combination of that and your query about what lessons my patients taught me has really been a fun thing to play with and think about and talk to her about over the last, several weeks.
Well, you've had a lot of medical learners that you've worked with, and maybe your daughter is going to be your most important medical learner that you can work with over the next few years. Let's start off a little bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? What first pulled you in the direction of medicine, and why family medicine?
Yeah, it's really a great story. I grew up in Mentor, Ohio, graduated from Mentor High School, so I'm a really local guy. I grew up in a family that was, nothing really special about it. I was the first person to have gone to college in my family across the board. My dad ran a grocery store. My mom worked in a factory, and there were three of us kids. So the idea of going to college for anything, let alone medicine, was really out there. I think maybe you'll see with some of the other things I've done, I was a little bit of a different one in our family as far as kind of doing things. But as far as kind of medicine, I was always really fascinated in science, fascinated in kind of solving problems. And I had a grandmother who never finished the fifth grade, she always tells us, because she grew up in an immigrant family. But what she always said was, you know, do what you want to do it really well, and take care of people, whatever you do. And I think that combination of that science, that desire to do that, and her teaching me really kind of led to medicine. I'll admit I was also a little bit of a junkie watching MASH when I was a little kid. So maybe it was the combination of all those things together that really led me to a career of medicine. I don't remember actually honestly wanting to be anything other than a doctor.
We all wanted to be Hawkeye, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just
Now,
can't say that to my daughter now because she doesn't remember that. So you and I can share that.
you've practiced medicine. You've led in very different settings from Ohio to Beijing to Rwanda, beyond. Now, what did working internationally teach you about medicine, leadership, and human nature? And what surprised you the most?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'm going to go back and I didn't answer your one question earlier because I think it kind of connects to this one about why family medicine, right? I had a lot of really good mentors going through undergrad and medical school who were family physicians, and just the kindness and the breadth of diseases they took care of, and the focus on family and how they really presented were just amazing mentors to me. It really resonated, I think, in some ways less with my science side and more with my grandma's side, right? of what I wanted to do in my career. And so family medicine was really important to me. And I think it connects over to that work internationally. I think, family physicians are really well suited for what's needed internationally, right? Having that broad depth of medicine and career and seeing how things come together. And I think that really leads to kind of your question about what surprised me the most. I mentioned to you that I probably have done some other things in my family that's I've been a leader or kind of out of the norm in our family. My wife is Chinese. She's a Chinese immigrant. We really have a multicultural family with what we live in and do. And what has struck me both from that part and the medicine and the work I've done is while you watch the news all the time and you think about how different we are, and we always talk about, right? What's really struck me is, and this is in medicine, how similar we really are across the world. And I think, that being a family doc has kind of really seen that in many different ways, through my family with my wife and that kind of a relationship. I've seen how similar we really are. But leading in medicine and caring for patients at the bedside, we all have a lot of the same needs, right? We're all worried about our children. We all want our children to get the best care. We're all worried when our parents are sick. We're all worried about, is this medicine going to make me feel better? We all want you to care for us and to listen, right, and be empathetic when we're ill. It's across all these countries I've been in and worked in. It's just fascinating. That surprised me. If you had told me that before, when I was in medical school, I would never have believed that.
Yeah, we have so much more in common than we have differences, and it's so
Yeah.
great to remember our common humanity. We'll talk a little bit more about your experience working in other countries because you spent a lot of time in China and in other countries, and tell me what that experience was like.
Yeah. I've been really fortunate to do a number of different items. I've done, just kind of going down to Central America, working in places that I've never seen electricity, delivering just hands-on care. I've had the opportunity I worked with a hospital in East Africa, working on their quality improvement for several months. I've worked in a Middle Eastern country. I have an NDA, so I'm not allowed to say which one it was, but at a very high level with the governments on how they work on their healthcare, which was really fascinating. And then you mentioned China, which is my kind of my real love because of my wife doing a variety of things, run a hospital, practiced medicine, tried to build a new hospital while we were there, and have taught and have actually provided a lot of ongoing care both while I was there and after I left, longitudinal care for some orphanages, care of the kids that they have. So I've been really blessed to be able to have a very broad exposure to the medicine, both from a leadership perspective, an operational perspective, and just a hands-on clinical perspective on, I guess, how many continents does that make now? I guess that's 4 different continents. I think if I'm adding them up correctly, my geography is going right. So it's been really fascinating. Again, as I said, a lot of similarities. It's kind of funny. I think of a couple things. One is where was I? I was talking to we were setting up some safety and quality issues in East Africa, and they said, "Well, Doctor Randy, you'll probably never believe this because you're from America, but we have problems with the orthopedic surgeons. They won't call back." And I said, "Uh huh, uh huh." And I said, "What else won't they do?" And we can't get them to come round on the patient, and they expect the medicine doctors to do. I said, "Uh huh. What else?" And the funny part about it was, right, Elliot, and I don't mean to pick on our colleagues in orthopedics, it's just an example that came to mind, is just again how similar kind of medicine, access to care, barriers to care, compassion in care, things like that are really agnostic sometimes of money and resources.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about your various roles.
Yeah.
Most physicians never make the jump from clinical medicine into major executive leadership. How did that happen for you, and what lessons did you learn
Yeah.
from taking care of the individual to helping shape entire health systems of care?
Yeah, I'll tell you, my dad, he passed away a little while ago, a few years ago, but he used to tease me that I was a slow learner because, he kept trying to convince me that I should be taking some business classes to go to medical school. And I kept telling him, no way, no way, no way. I wasn't going to do any of that stuff. I was just going to save the world one patient at a time with my stethoscope and my prescription pad back in the days when we had those things, right? Prescription pads. I wasn't interested at all. I was really going to hang up my shingle as a family doc somewhere, and I was going to just save the world was kind of my my dream. I got really fortunate again, mentors again, mentors. And it's one of the things I keep sharing with my daughter, get some really good mentors. Some couple of folks who really saw something in me. Uh, I joke with one of them I still talk to, and I said, "You either saw in me free labor or you saw something." But they saw in me some ability to lead and to take on things, to take on projects and lead them in a way that was needed, in the healthcare community where I was at the time. And they challenged me to take on some of these, early kind of projects. They challenged me to learn how to solve some of these problems that we were facing, whether it was throughput or access or whatever we were doing. And they kept kind of challenging me by giving me a little bit more, a little bit more. And it really sparked a fire for me. I realized that, yeah, I could probably not save the world one patient at a time. And I probably will never save the world, but boy, I could do something that would help every patient walk into the hospital or the clinic, whether I was there or not, whether I was on vacation, whether I was on duty. And that really, really excited me a lot. And I started to realize that I could do it, right? Had um, an ability to be successful at doing. And I had some really early small wins that were pretty significant wins. So I think the good mentors, that positive feeling, my grandma kept telling me, right, do your best and make a difference. And so those things really, I think, kind of spurred me along to want to make that switch. Although I will say that I don't think it's a making a switch. I'm passionate about still seeing patients. I still see patients frequently throughout the week. I jokingly say that sometimes it's probably more therapeutic for me because I love being at the bedside. But so it's not really a switch. I do both, and I do both with a lot of passion and excitement.
Yeah, another way to spread your impact, which is I know something you also do, is teaching. And one of the reasons that I got into residency education, medical student education, was that I could impact a lot more patients in the long run by teaching others, medical learners, and developing my philosophy of listening to the patient and paying close attention and all that, and impact a lot more people in the long run than I could do just by my
Absolutely.
just by myself. And I just wanna mention that you just won another teaching award, maybe 2, I don't even know, I can't keep up with all of them. But talk a little bit about your teaching experience and how that what you may have, to say about that.
Well, first, thank you. That's really kind. I think honestly, I think probably I get the better end of the deal with the students because I learn so much from them. But I'll take it. I'll take the win. Yeah, I love teaching students. I'm really involved in both medical student education. I have a medical student almost every day that I'm in clinic these days. I do some residents occasionally. In another role I do a lot of resident education. It's a lot of fun now actually being on this other side of, kind of doing administrative work. I get some MBA students and some non-clinical students now that I get to work with. In fact, I'm getting ready to spend some time in a couple of weeks with some MBA students and working on some process improvement projects and going through things. So it's great. It keeps me on my toes. It keeps me fresh. It keeps the excitement going. For me, when I see them, we're just got the future is amazing with some of these students that we see. I probably could never have competed with them back in the day if they were there competing with me in the medical school. And so, again, I think I get more out of the deal sometimes. And it's a way to kind of give back to the community, right? I think it's just another opportunity to give back to what we do. And so I really, really enjoy it. It's also fun, I think, because of the ability that I have. We have some downtime. Sometimes, patient doesn't show or a little bit of time after clinic chatting and that. And the students get a whole lot of biochemistry. And in fact, they could probably pass a biochemistry test faster than I could right now. But right, we get to then talk about why do you get to ask to do some things as a physician, right? And this kind of bleeds into my quality and safety work that I do. And really get to kind of open their mind up a little bit about it and to kind of think about those kind of aspects of care at a broader level, just like I was, asked to do early on in my career. So I like to be able to kind of mentor and guide and kind of help spark an interest in things other than just at the bedside care for the students. And that's exciting to me too.
Yeah, let's talk about your current role, which
Yeah.
focuses on safety, quality, patient experience, areas that a lot of people talk about, but few people really understand. What does your work actually look like day to day, and where do you think our health systems still are kind of getting it wrong?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I wish, Elliot, I could tell you that every day is a pretty sexy day for me. But, honestly, it is a lot of meetings. It's a lot of meetings. When my daughter was young and she came and kind of shadowed me one day a little bit at work, she's like, "Dad, I don't know. This is all meetings. I thought you did fun stuff." So then I took her to the patient care and she got excited. But it's interesting. So I'm really fortunate in my different roles throughout my career, whether I've worn the hat as a CEO or a CMO or whatever. One of the keys to me taking any of these roles has always been the ability to focus on quality and safety and the experience that patients receive. I don't think they're separate. They're so tightly together. And I can talk about that in a second. In this particular role, I'm really proud to be able to represent the Cleveland Clinic and oversee those aspects for the state of Ohio market, right? So it's a pretty large 15 hospital footprint, including the world famous main campus. As a little bit of a side, I'll always plug family medicine. I joke that I did never thought that they would, at such a specialty organization like this, would take a family doc to help lead across it. So I'm really excited about the ability to be the first, I think, family doc to be able to help lead safety and quality and patient experience for Cleveland Clinic. It's a phenomenal organization that's doing great work. What does it look like? It's different. Every day is really different. There are some days I sit in my office all day on one meeting after another, trying to keep up with emails and just trying to keep caught up. There's days that I'm putting out fires and talking to patients where something might have happened, where there's somewhere where we need to intervene. There's days that I'm coaching and teaching the staff around, and then there's days that it's really just trying to come up with strategy and working with the senior executives in the organization about how we're going to move things, or frankly where we need to go and what we need to do. So every day is brings really something different, really some different interesting challenges. But I think being a physician and doing this, the key is always making sure people keep that patient sitting in the middle of what we're doing, no matter what the conversation is. Let's kind of refocus it. How's this going to impact the patient? What's going to happen to the patient? What's going to happen to the next patient after that? And how are we going to do this? And I think that's where being a physician in this role is really exciting and what we get to do.
And I know you're putting out kind of like report cards for the docs, and you have to choose how they're getting measured, what they're getting measured on, and make sure they understand those report cards and know how to make them better, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting mix, right? I find my job some days is being an ambassador, some days being a translator, some days being basically anything anybody needs. You're right. Everywhere from kind of talking at the board level of what the board thinks really important, why they should think it's important, helping them think about what's important, right? Because why do you pick something that goes on a scorecard? You only have so much you know, real estate on a scorecard. You can only put so many things on it. So kind of working at the board and the senior executive level. And then also trying to translate that over to the clinical side, the physicians, the nursing, the operations, the wherever it needs to do it, why this is so important. But then also translating it into, okay, doc or whatever it is on your scorecard, how do we help you be successful? Not only and I think a doc can start with the whys, right? So a non-doc can have a hard time walking in and saying, "Elliot, you got to do this." But hopefully a doc can come in and say the whys because we've had the conversations, we've advocated, we've translated, we've discussed at the board and executive level. We've gotten the feedback from the docs, whether it's by being a doc myself or talking to the docs and developing that trust and relationships with the physicians. And so that's why I think it's really you're an ambassador kind of going back and forth in between to try to make what would be the best scorecard or the best set of metrics that's going to help the organization be as successful as possible. And how do you define that success? Safety, best care for patients, best outcome for patients, and doing what's right for the community.
Yeah. Now, healthcare has probably never felt more complicated than it is right now. We got
Yeah.
burnout of the physicians and staff. We got staffing shortages from that. We got financial pressures that are never
Yeah.
been harder. A lot of distrust among our patients, and there's AI disruption. As someone who leads physicians and systems, how do you approach leadership in times like this?
Yeah. If I say this too often, please tell me to stop. But I think some of it is the skills you learn as a family physician, right? Some of the best tools I have as a family physician are my ears, and listening, right? And being empathetic and understanding and building relationships and trust. And I think those are the things that are core to what I believe are my leadership. Now, there's times I have to stand up and be heard. There's times I have to stand up and say, look, I've listened, but we need to kind of move forward, right? Most people are pretty understanding that if you start that way, right? So that's kind of one key component to the way I see leadership. Another one is again just being that physician there. I think docs may not agree sometimes with what you're talking about and what you're doing, but when you can say, you know what, I've logged on to Epic and I've sat in front of that hard patient, right? They get it, right? Even if they don't enjoy it, they start to get it. And then when you're advocating, again, that ambassadorship of advocating at all sides and trying to find the right happy medium and moving forward, people get the pressures, but they also recognize that that we need to do this and we need to go forward. So that's really good. But you're right, this pressure is really tough. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I mentioned earlier, in my mind, safety, quality, and patient experience is an area where a lot of folks kind of think are different. And I think they're really tightly together. You can't have a good experience if you don't feel safe. What I would really like to add on to that though is caregiver experience. You can't have a good, safe, consistently safe, high quality, good patient experience if the caregivers are feeling stressed out, if they're worried about what's going to happen to them next, if they're worried how they're going to make it through their day, if they're worried about how they're going to close their charts out before midnight so they can spend some time with their kids. And so the common, very focused, how do we fix this, sepsis issues? I think we need to take a broader step and look at it more broadly. I believe we are in an organization of really smart people. And I don't just mean the Cleveland Clinic, but in general. But I think trying to solve each of these pieces one piece at a time is not the way it's going to be. I think we have to have that step back, thinking about the safety, the quality of experience for the patients and the providers, and then figure out how we're going to move forward to actually solve these issues.
Yeah, that makes sense. No, I know you spent a lot of time thinking about AI, and we've been talking about it a lot because it's moving so fast. 5 years from now, what do you think doctors will be doing less of, and what should we be doing more of right now?
But I'll tell you what, I don't know that I would have anticipated where we are now 6 months ago, right? With some of the AI stuff we're doing. It's really amazing. I mean, if you think about, you and I were talking about the AI scribe, the ambiance. I gotta say, in my career, that's been one of the best things that's happened, right? It's allowed me to spend a lot more time with my family and my patients. I don't know where it's gonna be, but I think a couple things that I think about. One is we need to embrace it. We need to embrace it. We need to not fear it. We need to try to learn. So I'm really challenging myself to learn as much as I can. I'm pretty slow with it, but I'm really challenging myself quite a bit to learn as much as I can about it, whether it's helping me in my personal life or in my professional life, the opportunities, because it is moving so fast. If you wait and you blink, it's going to be harder to get on that boat down the road once it starts happening. So I think that's kind of the one thing I think about and advice, so don't run away from it. I think we also have a really interesting opportunity. And Elliot, you and I have probably been around long enough to have seen right before EMRs, right? I mean, a lot of what drove EMRs in the early stages, it was not about clinical care and documentation. It was about billing and scheduling, right? And the other stuff kind of started getting added on afterwards and kind of developed that way. I think this is one of our big opportunities as clinicians to start thinking about, and this doesn't mean everybody has to go out and develop their own AI tool, but I think we have an opportunity to develop things in the right way that will truly serve the profession and serve patients and serve our communities, as opposed to hoping that somebody else is going to come in and solve it for us and give us an out of the box tool that doesn't fit, like some of the early kind of issues. So I think that would be my advice for a lot of physicians. What do I hope? What do I hope? I hope we as family physicians can do, and physicians broadly, but in my daily life can do what I really am passionate about and what I hope I'm really good at doing. And that's the complexity of the care, the holding the hand, the talking to the family, the looking folks in the eyes and comforting them, and not have to kind of get bogged down with some of the things that are pretty just you and I spend a lot of our time in every day. Refilling medications that I've never said no to as long as a couple criteria were hit, right? I heard on one of your podcasts that I think it was Utah recently authorized prescription refills by AI in certain circumstances. I think if we can take a lot of that stuff out, kind of manage and tee things up. Now the EMRs are so big, you can't even go through them. There's so much information. Always worried, what am I going to miss? So if we could kind of get some of those things and allow us to do the things that we do really well, that patients really, really need, that are in the way, or oftentimes not delivered because of all the other stuff we're doing that we can automate. That's where I think we should be, and hopefully we'll be 5 years from now.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. Now, we were talking earlier about how excited you were to share some stories about what you learned from your patients, and this is what
Yeah.
this podcast is all about. So, talk about some of the lessons that you learned from patients over the years.
Yeah, it's funny. So, we talked a little bit earlier about education and working with students. And as my daughter's now starting to kind of go along, I have a line that I always like to tell the students, right? Because sometimes they'll look at the schedule and they'll be like, oh, it looks like that patient's just here for another refill. Like, I'll go find the interesting patient or something, right? And so the line I always like to say is, look, if you don't learn something from every single patient that you touch, and I'm still learning, every patient I touch now, and I've been an attending for 26 years, then there's something wrong with you and me, right? So be curious, learn from everybody you touch, learn from everybody you see. If you really kind of think about it that way, kind of go into life that way, hopefully it's just this amazing kind of career of learning and discovery, one patient after the other. And that's how I've really kind of treated it. For what have I learned? I will tell you, I did not, when I was younger, didn't like to listen a lot. I like to talk a lot. I've learned from my patients, you know what it's like, right? Sometimes the more you sit and listen, the more you learn, right? And the more you can kind of solve it. So that's wonderful. I've been really fortunate too, just because I've practiced in so many locations, I mean, cultures, and I've led in so many situations that get me to contact patients as an administrator also. Um, I've been able to learn so much. I was thinking about one patient when you asked me this. I got to be honest, Ellie, this was the hardest question that you'd asked me because of just the rich amount of opportunities we've had over the years in our careers. I was going to share about a patient who I think impacted my life quite a bit, actually. And it's the simplest patient ever, honestly. A patient, she was 89 years old. Her name was Anne. And she lived alone. She lived across from our practice, and her family checked up on her a lot, and they would come and talk to me and right. And they were trying to let her be independent while trying to help her, right? And first day I met Ann, I was 2 years out of residency. I thought I was doing pretty good, right? I thought I was really, I had a plan. I was going to take care of everything for Ann, and Ann said no to pretty much everything I asked her to do. I said, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, right? And so, and I was busy, and Ann comes back about a month later. Like, she said no to everything. What's she back for, right? And it was a month. I didn't tell her she needed to come back in a month. And she comes back and she said, "Oh, I just wanted to talk to you today." I'm like, "Okay, anything you want to talk? Like, what's the agenda? Come on, like, right? Gotta go. What's the agenda?" She just started chit chatting about some things, and I said, "Great, okay." So she started showing up like that, and so I told my staff to give her an end of the day appointment once a month. I would finish my charting. We would sit and chat. She wouldn't do anything we wanted her to do clinically, but but she wanted it. And her family told me how wonderful she felt by being able to come talk to her doctor, to be able to have somebody that would listen to her, to be able to have somebody she could just kinda it was more coach I don't even know if it was coaching, it was more listening. I could have been a priest or a teacher or a social worker or something at the time. I never charged her for a visit, but
Wow.
but, yeah, you know, what did I learn? Like, just the power of being there for our patients, the power of listening to our patients, and the power of being present, right, for the person in front of you. Uh, Really, I think, and probably had more impact on my life. And I've seen some amazing patients and cared for so many amazing situations and complicated cases. But I think she's had the most impact on my life and how I treat patients and frankly how I function as an administrator and in my personal life.
Wow, that is incredible story. I don't want to end without getting into some other experiences that you had. You were a doctor for Vice President Biden when he went to China. Can you share any anecdote about that?
Yeah, it was the most amazing event. I was the CMO of a hospital. I used to work with all the embassies and that in China and in Beijing. And the Secret Service came one day and said, "We'd like to check out the hospital to see if Mr. Biden needs anything. He's gonna be here 4 days. We know where we can go for care." I said, "Of course." At the end, they said, "Doc, we really like you. Would you be willing to join the team with us for while he's here?" I'm like, "I don't think I have to check my calendar. Of course, I'm going to be ready here." So they load me up in their Secret Service cars, and we go up to the airport, pick Mr. Biden up, and we went to places that people don't go to. It's interesting. They were just talking about President Trump being in China in the secret garden. We were there. So we were in places in China you just don't get to go to, the Chinese White House and things like that. But what was really pretty cool about it was Secret Service was they were so professional. They were so amazing. They took great care of me. And Mr. Biden comes up afterwards at the end, and he said, I wanted to meet you, Doc. I wanted to meet you because the team said you did a fantastic job." And he puts his hand on my shoulder, and I swear I was probably with him for 30 seconds, but it felt like 3 hours just talking to him. He had such charisma, right? And he says, "Where are you from, Doc?" And I said, "Ohio." And he goes, "Where'd you go to medical school?" I said, "Ohio State." And he's, "Oh, what a great team they've got this year. What do you think?" And I'm a big Buckeye fan. And he's like, "My neighbor's got this Buckeye flag out there in Delaware, Doc, and you're a great guy, and thank you so much for all you're doing. And what do maybe we'll see you at a Buckeye game or something one of these days." And I thought like I'd been there with for hours with the fella, and just what a wonderful way to serve my country. I don't know that I did much, but to serve my country, to do something so unique, to be able to be led into doors that are just off limits normally to foreigners. I'll tell you a quick funny story about that really quick. We were in the Chinese White House. We were at a couple other places, and my wife's family, are all in China. And I was texting them. I'm like, "Guess where I'm at today?" It was fun.
Yeah, yeah, and then you also spent some time with one of the Olympic teams. I want to hear a minute about that.
Yeah, actually, it was a little bit broader. So that was actually how I got to work in China. The hospital that I ended up being the chief medical officer for was a foreign hospital. It was an American-owned hospital right in the middle of Beijing, and they were hiring some locum tenens to help out with the surge they thought was going to happen. And at the same time, they contracted with NBC News to provide care on the Olympic Green. NBC had about 3,000 employees, so they wanted to get care right there. And so I was assigned on the Olympic Green to help. But because we were also with NBC News, I had press passes. I had press credentials for everything. So I got to not only meet everybody that came through, all the dignitaries that came through, right? The Bushes and everybody else, but I also got like courtside seats to pretty much anything I wanted to go to. So I spent all day either seeing patients or seeing Olympic stuff, and it was really, really pretty, really amazing from that perspective. You would never get access like that. But it also did 2 other things for me. One is they liked me enough and offered me the job to be a CMO at their hospital, which changed my life. And 2, if you've ever been in a city where the Olympics are, I would say go. It was just magical with everything that's happening in the world. You'd go to a restaurant and you'd sit next to people from all over the world, and people would wanna talk, and people would wanna know where you were from. It was just magical, being in the city, during those times.
Wow, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank
Now,
you.
Lastly, you've seen medicine from a very diverse set of angles, clinician, teacher, executive, international consultant. What advice would you want most younger physicians and maybe even old family doctors like me to remember?
Well, I think let's put ourselves in the same category as old family docs together. How about Ellie? We'll join together because I've been, yeah. It's funny because as my daughter was applying to medical school, a lot of my colleagues said, and you may have heard this, right? Why are you going to let her go into medicine? Why are you going to encourage your daughter to go to medicine? It's so hard now. It's so different. It's not like it was when we were younger, right? And this goes back to your question earlier about the burnout and the challenges and things like that. And it's really had me thinking a lot about this issue. Should I be encouraging her to go into medicine? What advice do I have, right? And a couple of kind of key things I think about. First of all, nothing's the same. My wife's an attorney. Let me tell you, life as an attorney is not easier than it was 20 years ago, right? So we're not the only ones in this profession. But what's different between my wife and me is I've got a privilege that she'll never get. How many people, will a mother of a sick baby come in and hand to a stranger? That's a I mean, that's something that, Elliot, you and I get, right, as a privilege. And so we have a responsibility to keep that privilege going. We have a responsibility to teach the future. We have a responsibility to continue to give care and the privilege we get is absolutely amazing. And so don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of the passion that brought you here because no matter what career you're in, that passion needs to continue to be forward with it. My favorite saying, there's a t-shirt, my daughter always gets me one. It's from Life is Good. It says, do what you love what you do. If you don't have that, you're not going to be successful in any career, but give to it, make it better, realize the privilege that we have. And it's unlike anything we have. And just enjoy the patients have given me more than I could ever dream in my career and make that like that for yourself.
Wow. Dr. Randy Jernejcic, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Elliot, thank you so much. You're amazing, right? I mean, you're just such an easy guy to talk to. So, see, this is why you kind of built the trust enough to get me to come on in such a short time.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it. What I appreciated most about this conversation is that even after all the leadership roles, international work, and big systems responsibilities that you've had, you still sound like a family doctor at heart, someone paying attention to people, not just processes. I think a lot of us in medicine are trying to figure out how to navigate a world that keeps getting faster, more complicated, and increasingly driven by technology. But conversations like this are a good reminder that judgment, curiosity, humility, and human connection still matter, maybe now more than ever. I also loved hearing about how many different directions a career in family medicine can take. Sometimes younger physicians think they have to choose one lane forever, but your career shows that medicine can evolve in ways we never fully expect. Thanks to all of you for listening to Lessons My Patients Taught Me. If you enjoyed this conversation, please share it with a friend or a colleague. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and keep listening to your patients. They usually have more to teach us than we possibly can imagine. And remember, stay healthy out there.
The preceding podcast contained discussions of medical cases where names and identifying details were altered to protect the privacy of individuals. The views and opinions expressed were those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any affiliated institutions or organizations. This podcast was for entertainment purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice.